very good morning. Welcome along to round 13 of the ABB FIA Formula E World Championship. It's a doubleheader this weekend in the scorching sunshine. Looking forward to the second free practice session of the weekend. It was free practice one here yesterday afternoon, but for Saturday morning we're looking forward to getting the action underway. It's going to be hugely exciting to see what happens with some likely full power runs towards the end of the session, expected in preparation for qualifying later on this morning, when we have our 22 drivers all going head to head to make it through to the group stages and then hopefully the duels. My name is Tom Brooks, alongside me Alan McNish here to guide you through the action here today for the 2023 Hankook Rome E-Prix. Alan, this is going to be a hugely exciting weekend for this one, especially as the title fight is hotting up in the last couple of rounds of the season. Yeah, you're right. It's not only the title fight that's hotting up with this race here in Rome, and then also in London in a few weeks' time. It's also the temperatures already 27 degrees Celsius outside, just past 8 o'clock in the morning, and it is going to be pretty hot and hectic round here. Absolutely. Well, let's have a look, shall we, at the calendar for 2023. Of course, we've been all around the world so far this year. Brings us to round 13 and 14 here in Rome in Italy this weekend, before London in a couple of weeks' time for the finale of the 2022-2023 Formula E season. And you can see the drivers here keeping themselves relatively cool in the sunshine. This is Roberto Merri, who was coming out a bit of fire from Mitch Evans yesterday. Let's have a look at the driver standings a little bit later on here in a few moments' time. But yeah, it really was an exciting affair in qualifying. If your name began with J and ended in A, Dennis, then it wasn't such a good first free practice session for you, with a couple of issues that we'll come on to a little bit later on. But here for this second free practice session here this morning, only half an hour to make those final changes in terms of setup to the cars before we get the action underway here for qualifying later on this morning. And here are the point standings then. After Portland, it was Jake Dennis who ended up atop the order. Despite Nick Cassidy taking the victory, it was Jake Dennis who took 18 points plus then 3 for the quickest lap in the group qualifying session, and as you can see there, he was a point ahead of Nick Cassidy. Further down the order, still very much some points on offer. Stoffel Van Dorn a couple ahead of René Rast, likewise Lucas de Grassi a couple ahead of Andre Lotterer and Norman Nato there, as well as Eden Mortara tries to make progress up the order with Maserati just ahead of Dan Ticktum, or trying to make himself ahead of Dan Ticktum. So in terms of the team standings coming into this weekend as well, you can see Tag Heuer Porsche, some 6 points to the good of Envision Racing. Jaguar TCS Racing, a few points ahead in turn also of Avalanche Andretti, who didn't have a particularly brilliant start to their day here yesterday in the first free practice session. But Alan, this Rome circuit is a bit of a driver favourite. Talk us through what the track's all about. Yeah, it is. It's a very tricky circuit, actually. It's got a couple of different sort of sectors about it as the circuit weaves its way around about the track. It's also got quite a few undulations as well. Start-finish line is quite high up in altitude, drops down fast left, right, difficult braking into turn 3 there. Then underneath the bridge, at the start line there, because the start and the finish are offset, then a long, winding, fast section up the hill through 5, 6, very bumpy braking into 7. Now it gets into a technical section, 7, 8, 9, 10, all 90 degrees, and then a tight chicane, and then a loop round in towards the obelisk there, with attack mode on the right-hand side, and then 16, 17 coming back through. Very hard on the rear tyre. Right rear tyre takes a real heavy beating round here, but also the drivers have got opportunities to overtake, but it's going to be tough. Yeah, it certainly is. You can see there, track temperature up at 30 degrees at the moment, air temperature already 27 degrees, and it's only 10 past 8 in the morning. No rain expected here today, but temperatures actually expected to get up to sort of mid-30s, and well, it is going to be an absolute scorcher for the drivers to contend with. It's also going to be for the teams as well, because they're going to have to manage temperatures of the car as well to maximise his efficiency. So they've been doing that yesterday afternoon in free practice 1, and also they will be looking at that in free practice 2, how much energy they can recuperate to use on acceleration and boost out of the next corner is going to be a key sort of balancing factor, as well as the car balance itself. Well, the drivers out on track then for the second free practice session, the first of the day here in Rome. Jake Dennis immediately straight out onto the track. No surprise there at all. Technical problems for him yesterday. What I understand was a broken left front upright for him. Put him in the garage for the majority of the session. He actually only managed to get just 4 laps in total in that session.
Yeah, he knows this circuit pretty well. It's not actually been a fantastic circuit for Jake Dennis in terms of results, but it has been in terms of speed and performance, and so he'll obviously be a little bit frustrated. He came out right at the end of the session, so the Andretti team managed to get the car back on track. Important he got those first few feeling laps, and then he'll want to try and run as much as he physically can in this session to make up for the lost time.
Yeah, just having a look at his results over the last couple of seasons. Last year here he got a 13th in the first race and then retired, and then the reverse of that in 2021 in his rookie season. So be hoping for some more forward progress here this weekend. He's actually running a special helmet livery for this one as well, in homage to the Rome circuit. You can see the 2 Tag Heuer Porsches. Look at the messages here on the 2 halos for Felix da Costa and for Pascal. They've got messages for one another, have you?
Yeah, but come on. Do you like pineapple pizza, or do you cut your spaghetti? I've got to be honest with you, I go with Antonio on this one. Cut your spaghetti, saves your shirt.
That's a good point, yeah. No, I completely agree on the cutting the spaghetti. The pineapple pizza thing, I'm not going to voice my opinion on that because I'll probably be chased out of Rome before the end of free practice 2.
Yeah, Florian Modlinger there, sitting looking at his 2 charges going through. It's an important race for Pascal Wehrlein and also for Antonio Felix da Costa, because Antonio is, in my view, perfect teammate to be in the position as backup and support. Very aggressive, knows how to win, also knows how to win championships as well, and that experience within the team will be important, I think, for them.
Jaguar looking strong here this weekend as well so far. Sam Burr second in free practice, won yesterday. Mitch Evans, 5th fastest. It felt like he could have gone a little bit quicker if it wasn't for being stuck behind Roberto Merri at the end of the session.
Yeah, very angry at Roberto Merri. I'm not really sure what Roberto was meant to be able to do about it. He was actually doing the fastest lap of his session right just before the checkered flag. But ultimately, there was a little bit of a contretemps there. Antonio Felix da Costa, the first one, really pushing at the moment. The rear of the car looking as if it's a bit lively, a bit unstable as he was coming down through turn 2 and 3. And now in the fast section, there's new sections of tarmac as well round here, Tom, just like that little patch there. And that's something to watch out for as well, with this intense heat, with track temperatures going to be well above 50 degrees Celsius. That you may see some, I would say, changes in that surface throughout the course of the day.
Yeah, I was walking the track here yesterday. It's incredible how tight it is, actually, when you, especially going through the first sector, going through turns 3 and 4, and in particular around these 90-degree corners. It's so technical, and yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how the drivers are going to tackle it come qualifying.
Yeah, it is, and it's also, it's very, very narrow, but the other thing about it is bumpy, and the road has got camber, so if you're on the right side or the wrong side depends a little bit on how the car feels. So to some extent, the car is actually just floating around and moving around underneath you, and you've got to try to work out what is actually car balance and what is track characteristics.
Absolutely, yeah. We just had a brief yellow flag down at turn 7, so seemingly somebody ran on there, but good to see the Mahindras out in this session. All the Mahindra power cars, that is the 2 Mahindras and the Apt Cupras, had a bit of a shocker at the office yesterday. Degrassi and Merian, the factory Mahindra team, managed to set 8 laps apiece, but they were significantly off the pace. Degrassi some 3.6 seconds adrift at the quickest time, as we heard from Roberto Merri earlier on. Of course, he wasn't particularly pleased, 8.3 seconds away from the quickest time, and then Bryant and Muller not able to actually get any representative lap times on the board at all.
Yeah, they've had quite a few software issues this year. They had to pull out of one of the races earlier on in South Africa with all of the cars not ideal by any stretch of the imagination. However, we're on board now with Sebastian Buemi as he winds his way up the hill here. Just listen to it as he comes to the left. Little bit of a lift. Look at the action on the steering wheel. That car's dancing around underneath him.
Yeah, he's fighting that car, isn't he, as he comes on the brakes in towards turn 7. Oh, he was a bit late into there, wasn't he?
Well, that's where we saw the yellow flag earlier on, people realising they're going a bit deep in there and going down the escape road, doing a donut and coming back out again. A bit of a U-turn, but Buemi just made it through. He was really smiley. I saw him just leaving the hotel this morning. He was bubbly, and he's got, I think, a little bit of his mojo back now, having moved towards Envision. A change of team, a change of environment. And he's, I think, really now starting to get used to the Jaguar, which is quite a different car to what he's been used to before, because he was effectively with the single make car being Nissan or Renault as it was prior to that for the whole period of time in Formula E.
And very much looking like there is going to be a new driver alongside him for the 10th season of Formula E as well. Looks like Nick Cassidy's going to be Jaguar bound. We ride on board with the man who won at Portland last time out, sitting second in the championship, just 1 point adrift. Another yellow flag out here in this session.
Yeah, it's Mitch Evans, and he's gone down that escape road at that famous turn 7. I think we're going to see a lot of these in this in this practice session prior to qualifying. One person that's on a bit of a charge, just looking at the times, Jake Dennis. We said he did a few laps yesterday, but he's done the quickest first sector of anybody and is basically equaling the fastest of the second sector as well.
Yeah, exactly. It's important for him to get some good track time here. Look at Sergio Setticamera in the Neo. He goes off at turn 7, and his teammate Dan Tickton following him in sympathy as well. Synchronised Neo donuts.
Yeah, it looks very good for us, but to be honest with you, Dan should be looking at the apex and not looking at the car that's made a mistake, and so he sort of got dragged down the road. And it's quite easy for your eye to be taken to the car that's going off, and then naturally you kind of follow it. You've got to literally force yourself to practice looking to still where you want to go when you know an accident's happening.
Okay, really missed turn 4 though. Turn 15, we had too much front slip, a lot of front slip activation, especially going towards apex.
So talking about front slip there, that's understeer presumably.
Yeah, it's locking of the brakes, because remember they're recuperating from the front axle as well, and so from that perspective you've kind of got your braking force, but you've also got the recuperation aspects to it as well, and it's how do you sort of balance those out. And turn 4 he's talking about is the heavy braking, which will be the first braking at the start of this race, with the offset start line and finish line being, I think it's like 800 or 900 metres apart. Yeah,
I've understood that it's commonly known as Chaos Corner down in turn 4, which, as you say, becomes turn 1 for the start of the race. So looking forward to seeing what is going to happen there under racing conditions. Looking here at Maxi Günther, riding on board with the German driver at the moment.
He's a bit of a wild card for me. He's been very quick. He's 4 out of the last 6 races. He's been in the top 6. He's been on the podium. He's had a victory. And also, in my view, when he first came into Formula E, he had one of his best ever races round here, where he was fighting in the top 3 or 4 with, I think, the Neo at the time.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing what he is going to be able to do over the course of today as well. He's taken a victory back at the 11th round of the season in Jakarta.
Popped himself to the top of the timesheets.
Yeah,
Maxi Günther there. Yeah, Jake Dennis second.
Yeah, Dennis not too far adrift, just a couple of tenths of a second away. Jean-Eric Vergne on a personal best, the first sector here for DS Penske as well as he comes around. This is where the attack mode will be activated under racing conditions as well. The drivers will take a wider line through there, gives them another 50 kilowatt hours of power as well. Oh, Vergne just going a little bit deep in towards the next right-hander.
Yeah, car was bouncing a little bit in the front axle and unloading itself, which loses you the braking efficiency, and just was in a bit too deep pushing. You know, the lap times are looking at the moment a 40.2, that's on 300 kilowatt. A 39.6 was the fastest lap in FP1 on 350 kilowatts. So the circuit, I think, is quite a bit quicker and obviously significantly cooler than it was in the heat of the day at 5 o'clock yesterday afternoon.
Yeah, I was going to say about the track temperatures actually being a little bit cooler this morning. I imagine that will help the drivers just in terms of setting quicker lap times. This is Mitch Evans and his run on down at turn 7 in the Jaguar.
Yeah, he was close actually to trying to make it, but if he had, he would have, I think, had a barrier mark along the side of the car, because he comes into the corner and then there's that change of tarmac, the bump, and it's the bump that seems to unsettle them, because they're loaded already starting to turn in, they're still recuperating up towards the apex, and the bump's unsettling.
Yeah, there's a second run-off there for Sergio Setticamera at that corner as well. Just looking briefly there at James Bargley, team principal for the Jaguar TCS racing machine. Mitch Evans leading the charge for that outfit at the moment, 6 tenths of a second away. I was saying he was in 3rd place. He's now just dropped down to 4th because it's now an Envision 1-2. Cassidy and Buemi going to the top of the timesheets. So here's Jake Dennis now on a personal best 2nd sector, fastest overall in the 1st sector, so he's seemingly getting to grips with the Andretti. What of a sort of a disruption do you think that would have been to his day yesterday, given the track time loss he had in FP1?
Well, it's not learning the circuit, it's learning the evolution of the circuit in this new Gen 3 car, because remember the last time he was here, it was in the previous generation. So it is quite different there. They will have the information from Andre Lotterer, his teammate, and also they'll have a little bit of feeling in base and look at what the other cars are doing, specifically the Porsche team, because ultimately, you know, they've got an eye on what's happening there. And so in that respect, I think they will definitely have lost something, but I wouldn't say it's all lost, that's for sure.
Speaking of loss, not much love lost between Pascal Wehrlein and Jake Dennis at the moment. Dennis earlier on this weekend saying he and Pascal not the best of friends.
No, but if I'm very honest with you, in my racing career, I don't think I had that many really good friends as drivers, because you're competitors. And at the end of the day, you know, those two are two of the four that I think could win this championship.
Okay, nice work, mate. That's purple, sector 1, and you're looking at half a tenth, 800 sector 2.
Just information back to Jake Dennis, who's now in the pits after his run. He's dropped down to 7th, but I'm sorry, he's not in the pits. Yes, he is, apologies.
He is, yeah.
Pits. It's Evans that's just popped in a purple sector 1, so he's gone quicker than what Dennis. But what I was saying is that at the heat end of the title battle, and so therefore it is a bit difficult, very honestly, to be a tiger to try and win this race and this championship, and then suddenly be putting your arms around the shoulder and say, you know, it's okay, mate, don't worry.
Yeah.
The reality is there can only be one winner.
Exactly, and obviously Jake Dennis has got the advantage in the championship over Pascal Wehrlein. 154 points for Dennis coming into this weekend, 138 for Wehrlein. Riding on board here with Mitch Evans, double winner here in 2022. Took Jaguar's first win in Formula E back in 2021 as well. Hugely impressive. He absolutely loves this Rome circuit. I'm wondering what he was going to be like in these Gen 3 cars, as to whether he would still be able to gel with the car around this circuit, but seemingly he's looking pretty comfortable there. Personal best in the first sector, fastest overall here in sector 2, and looking like he's on an absolute flyer as he comes through the last couple of corners here too.
Yeah, this is where he got held up yesterday by Roberto Meri in these last couple of corners, so we didn't see what it was. The car's changing direction. That's been one of the characteristics, I think, of the Jaguar, as he pops himself into fastest, and also the fastest lap of this particular year. So Gen 3 already quicker than what he was able to do yesterday. But coming to it, Jaguar always, in all configurations that we've had here in Rome, because the circuit has changed over the years a little bit, it's always been extremely good in these 90 degrees, changing direction, getting the power down and accelerating. In the faster sort of corners like this, maybe not as good. There's some other cars that are maybe a little bit better or more acclimatized to it, but certainly the majority of these corners are 90 degrees, so I'm pretty sure they're looking at it thinking, this is an opportunity for Evans, an important one to make sure he gets maximum points to keep him in the title fight.
Look at just how bumpy it is here, watching a super slow-mo of Jean-Eric Vergne there. You can see getting almost airborne at some points here in this car.
Yeah, that was as you come over the jump at turn 6, and you do get airborne, you get the car very light, and it's also then how it reacts, how it lands. And so you've got to try to find your line as a driver, and as a team you've got to try to give a bit of compliance, because you don't want big vertical shocks going into the drivetrain.
Yeah, I was talking to one of the team members earlier on this weekend, actually, and they were saying about the car. I said, so what sort of differences for this circuit do you have to make compared to other tracks? And they said, well, you know, for one thing, we'll have to raise the ride height just a touch so that we can have compliance over those bumps. And I mean, you can just see how much compression and you know, rebound that car's got to have.
And remember, you've got the front drivetrain, you've got the rear, and you've also got the battery. And so you want to make sure that those vertical shocks are as minimal and as absorbed as possible.
Hey, great to see Michael Andretti here for the Avalanche Andretti team. And this is going to be, I understand, one of his last visits of the season, but definitely here to impart his many years of racing wisdom. There's with team principal Roger Griffiths as well. Of course, Jake Dennis very much involved in the title fight coming in towards the last few rounds of the season, and Andretti's influence here this weekend could prove to be pretty beneficial.
Well, I think Roger Griffiths is a very, very good team principal, and I think having Michael there is an added little bit of bonus, maybe pressure. You could put it whichever way you want, but the reality is that they've delivered as a team this year exceptionally well, really, really well. They've got a driver, a car, and a team working in harmony, and without doubt, I think they've got an extremely good chance of taking the title. But they've obviously got this weekend to get through before they can even think about that.
So now just over halfway through this second free practice session, it's Sebastian Buemi who's at the top of the timesheets from René Rast, the two McLarens, having a good run of things so far at this point in the session. Coming towards the end, though, this is where we're going to start seeing drivers beginning to push a little bit more, getting themselves sort of geared up for qualifying later on this morning, isn't it?
Yeah, you've got qualifying coming up, but there's also a couple of stages to qualifying. So you've got the first part, which is the group stages, and you've got two major groups, and that's at 300 kilowatts. So that's race power, basically. And then afterwards, when you get into the duels, then it comes up to 350 kilowatts. And it's trying to get the right rhythm and feel. So some teams will focus on actually the 300 kilowatt, if that's their weaker area, just to get into the duels. And others will think, I'm confident enough to go straight to it, so they'll focus maybe a little bit more on their timing for it. But I think round here, with the importance of it, it is going to be very important to qualify well, because overtaking is maybe not quite as easy. I don't expect the same type of race as we had in Portland, where it was, as it's now called, the peloton race. I don't see that happening quite so much, and I think we'll be maybe into a more normal characteristic type of event.
Yeah, time's looking a lot quicker this morning in the cooler track conditions, by the way. As Alan mentioned earlier on, 1:39.6 was the quickest time from FP1. Now with a bit of track evolution, slightly cooler conditions, 1:38.9 for Sebastian Buemi at the top of the timesheets. So be interested to see how this continues as this free practice session begins to wind down. Just looking at the groups actually for qualifying as well, incredibly strong. Group A, you've got Jake Dennis, Pascal Wehrlein, Jean-Eric Vergne, Maxi Günther in there, Sam Bird. Oh,
apologies there. I just saw one of the McLarens trying to dive out the way and towards, it looked like, into the back of a DS Penske there, but I think it was all coordinated. It was just a bit more my reaction.
I was busy looking down the sheet and I was wondering what on earth was going on.
Sorry, please continue.
No, you're absolutely fine. But as I was saying, yeah, first group of drivers in Group A look really strong. And obviously only 4 places up for grabs going into those duels from that group.
Emma, come on. Do you think the second group's any easier?
Oh, no, that much is true.
Nix, Cassidy, Evans, Da Costa, Buemi, just taking the first 4 in the list. And so I think it's going to be really tight. I would suggest, actually, you're right, though. Here's Dennis.
Sector 3 and track is clear.
I have no idea if I've got that. Like, I got all the loops, but I've got no reference on my dash.
That was, he must have gone through the attack mode there. He's talking about the loops at the attack mode activation point, and he's gone through them, but it didn't say that he had then gone to 350 kilowatts on his dashboard, so you could feel it. Definitely 50 kilowatts extra you would definitely feel, but you obviously need the information on the dash.
Yeah, you've got to be careful to not miss that. We saw that, was it last season? I was watching Formula E Unplugged Season 2, which you can now get, by the way, watch for free on the Formula E app. And there was a driver at one of the first rounds of the season, might have been Stoffel Van Dorn actually, who managed to miss the attack mode. Let's have a look at this then, coming down in towards the left-hander. You can see this is the McLaren just jumping out of the way into the path of the DS Penske.
Yeah, they were actually just trying to get out of the way, I think, and both cars, the DS Penske and then also René Rast in the McLaren doing that. I had a driver that actually got sort of pumped into the wall at that point, so that I've maybe got a little bit of historic sort of reference towards incidents in and around there. But I don't think there was any foul. They were actually doing a good job, and their teams had told them there was faster cars coming.
Oh, a bit of a snap of oversteer there coming through the final sector for Jake Dennis. He goes second quickest with a fastest overall in the second sector. Enwo Mortara looking pretty good here. The Swiss-Italian considers this very much a home race for him in the Maserati. And of course, a home race for Maserati here this weekend. He'll wanting to be putting on a good show, and he's looking pretty good here on this flyer at the moment. 11th quickest, the second off the pace set by Sebastian Buemi in the Envision. But the Maserati seemingly looking relatively strong in the sort of latter stages now of this second free practice session, which will be encouraging for Enwo Mortara.
And Edo needs a good race as well, because he's had a pretty shocking season so far in terms of results. It just hasn't hooked up for him whatsoever, considering this was a man that was close to winning the title last year. And it's been exactly the opposite. You've got to go on to page 2 to find him in the championship standings. And it's not through lack of talent, that's for sure. It just hasn't quite clicked into place, as Mortara now pops himself up into 3rd place in the fastest final sector, which looks to be getting quicker and quicker as it goes on.
Let's have a look here at Jake Hughes, just coming on the run down into turn 4. Hard on the brakes, they're locking what looks to be the rear axle. as he just came into that corner, having to do a donut, spin the car around and get himself back facing in the right direction. Yeah, just getting the car, in fact I think it might be the front axle that he locked going into there, come to think of it.
It's got some undulations there, and it is quite a tricky braking area, and you do have to spot the apex, because as the road then, as it goes uphill, it comes back to you a little bit, so therefore the apex is critical. If you miss it, then you're better actually to go down the escape road. Yeah,
Jake Dennis, of course, a rookie in the championship, first visit here to this Rome circuit as a result, and didn't have a particularly fortuitous round last time out at Portland, finishing outside of the points. Needs a strong result actually. In the last 5 races, only been the points a couple of times.
Yeah, Jake Hughes, I think he showed a lot of performance at the beginning of the season, so I think he's without doubt got something in there. But ultimately it hasn't sort of all hooked up, as we see.
I think this is another replay. I think it's another point actually. Another off-track excuse. I think again might be
It's the same
turn 4 again. So he's made the same mistake here, hasn't he? Yeah, that McLaren has been really quick under qualifying trim, but it's race pace where they've struggled with. Seems like that Nissan powertrain hasn't been as efficient as some other of the manufacturers in racing conditions, at least.
Yeah, I'm just coming back to that. It's not often I see a driver making the same mistake 2 consecutive laps going down the same escape road, so there's possibly something that needs to be looked at there in the way they're recuperating, or the brake balance migration from the front to the rear as he's going into that corner.
So let's see what happens then in the last 8 minutes of this session. Looking here at Nick Cassidy down in 12th fastest. He was one of the quicker drivers earlier on, such as the pace that has been coming down lap after lap here in free practice 2. And Cassidy, some 2 seconds off the pace at the moment here.
He is, but he's also not used 350 kilowatts yet. He didn't use them yesterday either. He ran the whole free practice without it. And so without doubt, and they did this in Portland, they've done this a few times, where they seem to focus very much on the race. Maybe compromising qualifying a little bit, but Cassidy, without doubt, we saw it in Berlin, we saw it in Portland, he was able to fight his way through to the front and then control the race from there. I think it'll be a little bit tougher round here to do that from the mid-pack. However, saying it, their strategy seems to be working for them.
Mitch Evans looking pretty handy in the Jaguar TCS racing machine, riding on board with the Kiwi. One of the top 4 that's in the championship fight at the moment. Fastest overall in that first sector, personal best here in the second as he comes round into the hairpin. Pascal Wehrlein now to the top of the order with the 138.6 as it stands at the moment. The next 3 drivers, Van Dorn, Gunther and Bird, all in the pits at the moment. But this is an opportunity for Evans to take the Jaguar to the top of the timesheets as he rounds the final few corners of this Rome circuit. Slightly wide there maybe on the entry in towards that right-hander. Gets it into the left though, gets ready to break the beam. What is this going to be for Evans? It is to the top of the order by 0.3 of a second. So really impressive time there for Mitch Evans.
Go race, 14 lap.
Go back to basically a race energy management setting for the in-lap, so that was a good lap by Evans. The car does look very nice at the end of the lap. The way the front just changes from turning left to turning right, throws it in, it looks as if it's precise. Where Mitch wants it to go, it will go. And that allows him to get a nice, easy acceleration out as well. And that will also allow him to try to control the rear tyre temperatures, if that, which I presume it will be, is going to be an issue later on in the race.
Yeah, I was going to say, just how critical is that going to be, those rear tyre temperatures?
In the race, it's going to be important to try to manage it, to try to put all that instantaneous electric torque onto the ground. Now, you don't want it necessarily to be wheel spinning, that's for sure, but you need to try to manage it, especially with these constant left-right. If you look at it, the steering wheel's not straight very often around here. They are even turning on what we would normally classify as a straight, down the hill into turn 3, or then up into turn 6 and 7. As there's another yellow flag there at turn 7,
yeah,
and
exactly.
It's 11. It is Lucas de Grassi has gone down the escape road as Lotter pops himself up into 3rd. That's very good for Andretti's because he's probably a little bit missing in action in the defence of Jake Dennis in the championship fight so far.
Yeah, it hasn't been a particularly brilliant season for Andre Lotter, and he'll be hoping to try and play that rear gunner for Jake Dennis at this critical point of the season, riding on board here with Dennis. Bit of traffic just in front of him at the moment. As you can see the Neo there just going in towards the attack mode, but really good in the second sector here for Jake Dennis. Could this be an opportunity for him to ascend himself to the top of the timesheets as he goes through 16 into the left of 17. Front end not looking too bad through these next couple of corners.
Yeah, the rear floated into the corner behind him. He's got a couple of cars not holding him up, but in eyesight as he drops himself into second. 2/10 behind Mitch Evans, but I think there's probably another 10th in the pocket there for Jake Dennis if it was a clean end to the lap without another car in his view.
Sacha Fenestraz just getting ready to go out for his final run in the session. We actually had him in commentary for the rookie free practice session here yesterday afternoon, and he was absolutely fantastic. Finished in free practice 1, in 9th place for Nissan, and that was, where was that, about 9/10 of a second off of the pace, so he'll be able for a bit more forward progress. Currently sitting actually in 9th in this session here as well. This is the man from free practice 1 who was at the top of the timesheets, Pascal Wehrlein. The German driver, we ride on board with him. Fantastic driver's eye view. Just to give you an idea of how tight and twisty and technical this street circuit is. What I was amazed at about walking around this track here, Alan, is just how blind some of the faster corners are as well.
Yeah, they are. It's all pretty blind. Street circuits are like that. Walls are higher than the car, and so therefore there's a lot of requirement of good marshalling, and that's something that is it's obviously very important and very good round here. But you also need to have very quick information as Wehrlein slowed down because Robin Frins is off somewhere as well by the looks of things.
Looks like they may have been down at turn 11. I think he's had a bit of an off-track excursion. Just hearing a bit of team radio that Jake Dennis feels like he's got a little bit more in the locker. I mean, that's no surprise at all. He had a little bit of traffic towards the end of his lap, and he's a couple of tenths of a second just behind Mitch Evans here.
Yeah, but looking at it, the cars are, I would say the Jaguar and the Porsches have got their speed in different areas of the circuit. It looks like the Porsche's very good in the middle sector, but the last sector, the last laps of the track, as we see Robin Frins doing a nice little donut. Good that he stopped it before he reversed into the wall.
Yeah, judges will be marking him out of 10 for that one as he
teammate goes by.
Yeah, brought out the yellow flag, and it hasn't, as we said, been a brilliant session so far for Apt Group. It hasn't been a brilliant weekend so far for any Mahindra-powered machine. They didn't manage to get any times on the board. Yes, they did, either of the Apt Cupras, so very much on the back foot going in to this weekend. His teammate Nico Müller and Robin Freund in 20th and 21st place, respectively. They'll be very much hoping for a better run of things in qualifying later on here this morning. But a couple of minutes now left of this session. Drivers now winding themselves up for one sort of last attack of this road track here, Alan.
There's a couple that will be looking to try to link it all up. Andre Lotterer already there because he's brought himself up. He was in 3rd place, 4/10 off now of Mitch Evans, but I think he's certainly in the game. There's no question about it. Lotterer, he is actually in the 2nd group, I think.
Yeah, just
apologies, in the 1st group, so he's in the tough group in that respect. Not that the 2nd group's easy by any stretch, but he's got to try to make it through there in the 1st group.
Just speaking about that group qualifying for a moment as well, obviously we're going into that a little bit later on here. We've seen so many yellow flags in free practice. If you get that on your quick lap in the group stages, I mean, that's going to absolutely ruin it for you, isn't it?
Yeah, but that's part of the skill of it, is making sure you've controlled as much as you can control, and that's about track positioning. And so there's always that risk if you go to maybe the optimum of the circuit, which is usually last, then you can gain a little bit there, but you're always at risk of someone having a yellow flag in front of you.
Just driving here with Stoffel van Doorn. Let's see what the Belgian, the reigning champion, is going to be able to do here in this session. He'll be hoping for a little bit more forward progress in that DS Penske as we ride on board with that driver's eye view coming round through the obelisk then in towards the final sector of the lap. How's the car looking to your eye, Alan?
To be honest with you, looking at this camera eye view is bouncing up and down, but that's just the bumps of the circuit. If you look at it, it looks a bit lazy through here in comparison, a bit of traffic. It's obviously it's coming out the final corner now. It just didn't necessarily look as if it had the front precision that you had from, say, for example, Mitch Evans in the Jaguar.
So checker flag is now out at the end of free practice 2. Some drivers on personal best lap times here. Let's see what Antonio Felix da Costa in the Porsche is going to be able to do. 14th quickest for him at the moment, 1.6 seconds off of the pace, but he is setting personal best lap times in the first and second sector, so looking pretty handy here. Mitch Evans on an absolute flyer here too. Fastest overall in the first sector, fastest in the second sector as well. Da Costa looks like he's going to bring himself further up the order too.
Yeah, he definitely is, but I think we should forget about his lap time, because it's actually Evans. If he finishes this lap, even with an average final sector, it's going to decimate everybody else.
Yeah, 0.3 of a second up he was in that second sector. Let's see what Da Costa does as he comes around the final corner. Takes the checkered flag, third quickest for him at the end of free practice 2. Riding on board though, we are with Mitch Evans. Great first sector, great second sector. Can he hook it all up in that Jaguar through the final sector? A little bit on the ragged edge coming through the last couple of corners into the final left-hander, ready to break the beam as he comes to the timing line. 4.27 tenths of a second, 6 tenths of a second overall, ahead of Jake Dennis at the end of free practice 2 there for Mitch Evans. That was a meteoric lap right at the end of the session.
Well, it definitely was laying down the cards. That's 1.8 seconds quicker than FP1 yesterday. It was a delivery. Listen to his radio.
That's P1, purple, 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 mega, 6 tenths.
Contrasting fortunes for teammate Sam Bird, down in 17th, 1.6 seconds off of the Kiwis' pace. So, yeah, work to do for Bird, because he was actually pretty quick in the first free practice session. Let's see whether he's able to turn things around. Let's have a look here at Jake Dennis right towards the end of the session, and that's into turn 7 again. He has an off-track run here as well, has to spin the car around. There's going to be more rubber laid down at the end of turn 7 than there will be at some corners of the track here.
I think you're right there. Heard it recuperating and trying to get the energy back in, but at the same time there's a bit of wheel locking and starting to lock that inside left, which would have then dragged him towards the barrier, so therefore everybody taking the avoiding action down the escape road.
Well, Jake Dennis ending that session second quickest, 6 tenths of a second away from Mitch Evans. What a superb start to his weekend. Contrasting fortunes though for Nick Cassidy, 15th quickest for the Envision driver at the end of free practice 2. He was, what, 1.3 seconds off of the pace of Evans.
Yeah, but I don't think if we look at it, he hasn't done his full power mode, so from that perspective then I think he's definitely working in a slightly different mode.
So these are some of the moments that we saw down at turn 7. These are the 2 Neos going off in tandem as well, and also an off-track moment there for Mitch Evans, the man who topped at the end of that session. Sergio Sette Camera did it once and fancied it twice. You can see how much skill we've got to have to get that car back round and righted.
I think there's actually 2 things that are very positive about it. One, it's got a massive amount of lock, and so you can spin it around basically on a Euro. But the other thing is with the instant torque as well, it just lights up the rear wheels, and so they definitely can, but they're going to have to practice it, because without doubt through the qualifying we're going to see it, as now everybody is lining up to do their practice start. Now you can see where the start line is and how it rolls down into that turn 4. And so, as you say, is going to be I would say there's going to be a few bits of rubbing and bumping as they're dropping themselves down into the first corner during the race later on this afternoon.
Yeah, you can see the practice starts here then just taking place as drivers try and lay a little bit of rubber down on the grid. This is on the run down into turn 4. Running on board here with Sebastian Buemi. What is the start procedure here in one of these Formula E cars?
Well, basically you want to try and understand what the grip of the circuit is and how much power can you actually then put onto the ground. And so this is your only opportunities, and especially in this circuit as well, because you've got quite a lot of camber on the roads. It's different from one side to the other. So historically you would line up one of your drivers on one side, one on the other, to get 2 sets of data and information. And then it's to see how that's evolving as well. But without doubt, the right-hand side in the direction of travel, so where we see the Avalanche Andretti car and now the Neo, that is going to be, the right-hand side is going to be the cleaner side, because that's where all the cars are coming out of turn 3 and then running down to turn 4. But the left-hand side, you've just got to, that's where you qualify, you've just got to make the best of it. So you need the data of the track grip and what you can actually put down onto the ground as well.
Yeah, teams will be going back and debriefing after this just to see what changes they're going to be able to make to the cars ahead of qualifying later on here today, and also as well what the track conditions were like if they were on the dirty side of the grid ahead of that practice start here. Drivers just pulling away and getting themselves back into pit lane, so you can see the lights coming on all in sequence here. The 5 red lights, the lights go out, and then drivers move away from the grid. So at the end of free practice 2, it is Mitch Evans who tops the timesheet in the Jaguar TCS racing machine. 6 tenths of a second ahead of Jake Dennis, 7 tenths ahead of Antonio Felix da Costa. FP1 leader Pascal Wehrlein finishes FP2 in 4th place ahead of Edo Mortara. Good session for the Swiss-Italian in what he considers his home weekend ahead of Andre Lotterer, Seb Buemi in the Envision machine ahead of Stoffel van Dorn, Maximilian Gunther, and then Jean-Eric Byrne, who was 10th quickest at the end of that session in the DS Penske, 2 DS Penske's inside the top 10. Sacha Fenestraz just outside ahead of René Rast, Dan Ticktum and Sergio Sette Camara. We saw them going off track at turn 7. They finished 13th and 14th respectively in that session. And championship protagonist Nick Cassidy down in 15th, 1.3 seconds off the ultimate pace. So work for him to do ahead of qualifying here later on this morning. 2 group qualifying sessions with 11 drivers in each. Then we go forwards into the duels. 4 drivers from each of those groups will make it through into the duels, and it will go into the quarters, then the semis, and then the finals as we decide who is going to line up on pole position ahead of round 13 of the ABB FIA Formula E World Championship. So back in the garage here for Mitch Evans. No surprise that he's sweating. It's getting up to about 29 degrees now here, only at just before 9 o'clock this morning. And he'll be debriefing with his team. When you finish a session so strongly like that, I imagine it gives you a huge confidence boost as a driver.
Yeah, it also gives the team confidence as well. It gives the mechanics, everybody around about his car will feel the fact that they have got performance in their pocket, and they've got a driver that is very much extracting it, and that's what everybody wants. You want to see your car drift to the limit, and a 37.8, 6 tenths ahead of everybody else is definitely driving it to the limit.
Yeah, certainly did lay down the gauntlet. You can see here some highlights from free practice 2 then. Some drivers push beyond the limit. You can see the 2 Neos going off in tandem here down at turn 7. Lovely pirouette though as they made their way back onto the track. Thankfully the Neo team found the funny side as their 2 drivers had to take to the escape road. But it was all about getting data here in this second session. Even the man who finished on top in free practice 2, Mitch Evans, found the limits of that 7th corner. James Barkley watching on, but ultimately, of course, his driver ending up at the top of the timesheets. The Rome circuit is incredibly bumpy, and it's been testing the drivers here all weekend. Jake Dennis was trying to find the limits after a shortened first free practice session owing to a broken front upright on his Andretti machine. He ended up the session second quickest, 6 tenths of a second away from Mitch Evans. Problems though for Nick Cassidy, not ending the session in a particularly brilliant way, down in 15th in the standings. Likewise there for Robin Freins as well in the App Cupra. He had a slight spin coming through turn 16. Thankfully managed to keep the car out of the wall. You can just see how bumpy this circuit is as well, as the drivers were threading the eye of a needle. The pace really began to hot up at the end of free practice 2 as they began to try and find the limits and get themselves prepared for qualifying. Ultimately though, it was Mitch Evans with an absolute scorcher of a final lap in that session. At 6 tenths of a second the advantage he held over Jake Dennis. What a really exciting second free practice session here, Alan. Looking forward to qualifying here later on today.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a very busy afternoon that we're going to have for qualifying, the importance of it to try to get yourself right at the end, and then for the race itself.
Absolutely. Well, qualifying comes along the way later on here today in Rome. See you then.
Hankook Tire.